In your opening statement, you said that the error rate is fundamentally flawed, and you know, the reality is it is with us, so we have to deal with it, and it directly determines whether the state will face significant financial penalties beginning in fiscal year 2028. Under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, states with error rates above 6% must pay between 5 and 15% of total SNAP benefit cost, not merely the costs associated with erroneous payments. What were New Jersey's SNAP payment error rates in federal fiscal years 2024 and 25? And what concrete steps has the department taken to reduce them?
I'll turn it over to Assistant Commissioner in a second for what concrete steps we've taken to reduce them. But I do want to point out the letter that we sent to the congressional delegation. It's in the folder before you. And Figure 2 does have the payment error rate as calculated by current federal regulations, as well as the payment error rate calculated by a handbook. And not to get too technical, but as long as I was in DC, regs trumped handbooks. But the handbook is what's guiding some of those error determinations for purposes of penalties. And number one, we don't agree with the handbook's assessment. For instance, it assesses administrative error as payment errors, whereas the regulations say payment errors are payment errors, just as a for example, right? So we don't concur with the blue line on that chart, which has our payment error rate skyrocketing at 30 some odd down to 7 or some odd. Our payment error rate, we can always do better. Let me be clear. I want to get that better, and we are working on doing better, and I will turn to her in a second. But we fundamentally don't agree with A, the assessment of the payment error rate, and number two, the use of it to decrease our benefits. Just as one example, a payment error rate could be positive or negative. We could have overpaid one individual and underpaid another individual. $0 cost to feds, that's $4,000 in terms of how that is assessed as a payment error. So it is not like this is just money that we owe the feds somehow. I want to disabuse folks of that notion. Not saying we shouldn't be held accountable, but we should be held accountable for error rates that make sense, that are grounded in well-vetted regulations, and that we have time to adapt and understand the implications for what that means. Do you want to hear a little bit more about what we're doing to address that?
Sure.
I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon. So I just want to underscore what the commissioner said, that the payment error rate is not an indication of fraud. And so many of the things that we've been doing now is putting counties on corrective action plans if there are specific issues that we need to address, meeting with them regularly. There are quality control liaisons, meeting with the county directors, with staff in the agency to review their errors, getting very focused on a management evaluation. So we're very targeted on some of the specific areas to make sure that we are reducing the error, and our error rates have been reduced over the last couple of years.
Okay, in fact, you probably shaved a question off my with that answer, but thank you very much. Related to that, Mississippi and other states are investing in case management software modernization and enhanced verification systems to reduce these error rates. What technology investments will be made to improve eligibility verification, for instance, and reduce caseworker and client errors? What are the target rates, and when do you believe they will be operational? And let me just add to that we get a lot of calls from constituents when they have to deal with paperwork and things like so. Client mistakes, are a big issue, and not just with you folks, with across state government. It's just the nature of having to get people through the system. So with that in mind, if you can fill us in on what those proposals are and what your plans are.
Yeah, and by the way, I appreciate your advocacy for your constituents. It represents well, and please know that we're always going to be responsive to constituent incoming. It's an important part of what we do here. With regard to how we advantage tech, I'll talk on both the Medicaid and SNAP side for a second, but we're working very closely, for instance, with the New Jersey Innovation Authority. We're probably across state government, the single department that's doing the most to partner with them, looking at ways to look at our own systems, looking at ways to build new tech. For instance, on the Medicaid side, looking at building tech to help with this community engagement. to help people document that community engagement and help maintain that documentation by connecting to validated other data sources, for instance. We're doing work with our contractors to understand how can we get better in terms of identifying how some of those processes and data connections can get more streamlined and automated, how to reduce the paperwork burden where we might know that information somewhere in state government, how can we connect those dots. We're always looking for those opportunities. We're very focused on that right now, particularly as we head towards the Jan 1 for Medicaid and some of the ongoing challenges and work requirements with regard to SNAP. That is an everyday thing we talk about.
Okay, are you aware of any of the software that other states have begun to implement?
I don't know the specific about Mississippi.
No, all I would say is that we have been meeting with a number of vendors just to see if what they are doing in some other states would be applicable to the work that we need to do here. So that's an ongoing discussion.
Okay, if you would, through the chair, if you would be able to get us some information, if you get specific. Oh, here we go. If you get any, definitive software or programs that would help us understand what's going, what you're doing to improve things, with things coming down the road, if you know what I mean.
We're very committed to looking at modernizing the systems however possible. I want to point out very clearly both our SNAP and Medicaid systems, as the chair pointed out earlier, are built on relatively old tech. I'll just put it that way. And our strategy is how can we overlay tech add-ons and modules that both speak to the underlying tech without disrupting it. I do think at some point over the next few years, I would love to have a conversation about how we fundamentally upgrade that. That is not a Jan 1 thing, and that is I would think that would be a terrible idea for us to sort of try and redo that whole system right now as we head to these transitions.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, just more personnel issues. States have identified inadequate training and client confusion, which we touched on, as major sources of payment errors. And they seem to be a little bit easier lift, I think, if it's just a matter of retraining existing personnel. When you look into that, could you see if they can get some mics that work? Okay. What comprehensive retraining programs has the department considered for state and county staff to ensure accurate information gathering and data entry? And this is really important when you need to have coordination between all of the levels of government that deal with this. And what specific outreach initiative educates SNAP recipients about reporting requirements and information updates? And the outreach is certainly with your office, but I think it's something that our offices, our district offices, would welcome to be a part of too, because we're usually the first point of contact for constituents who have issues or have a need to deal with this.
Well, and I'll turn to both assistant commissioners in just a second, but I would point out it's the counties that are often the first that are contacted here. They are the front door for both nutrition and health benefits, and so enhancing our partnership with the counties is the first most important thing with regard to how we can address those. How are the counties supported? How are the counties engaged? How are we being better partners to the county to help them answer and run down some of those questions? So that is one piece. The second piece is we do have eligibility contractors. How are they responding? How are the call center staffed? How is that working in terms of how that process is working? And then the third thing is we do get incoming calls. How are we managing those just on a case-by-case constituent basis? All that's critical. And again, as I open with you, I very much share your commitment to constituent services. It's an important feature and something I've been asking about since the day I got here. I'm pretty confident our folks do well here, but there's always room to do better, and we'll take the feedback.
Okay, and if I could, and I'll probably speak for all of my colleagues here, if there are things that we should know at the district office level that would be helpful, if you can keep us in the loop, that would be really helpful for us, and in turn be helpful for you.
I think Greg wants to get in here. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, on the Medicaid side, I think your point, Assemblyman, is very well taken. We are constantly working with counties to train their staff and make sure, because Medicaid requirements are constantly changing, that they are up to speed on the latest. It's an ongoing dialogue. I will also say, with respect to communicating these changes that are coming to members, that is very much front of our mind. I think, as Commissioner said earlier, the challenge here is these are complicated changes. It can be hard to distill it down to one sentence, and people are busy, their lives are complicated. So the work that we're focusing on is making sure that we are really working through community-based organizations, people who are already on the ground, to help explain and guide people through these changes, because they're pretty technical, and it's easy to lose people as you're going through that complexity.
So I would just say the same on the SNAP side. We do a significant amount of training at the county social service agencies. We also do policy clarification a lot. We meet with them regularly to go over, and to Greg's point, things are changing every day, and so providing that information to them is very important. I will say that we also have about, I believe it's about 30 local social service agencies now, in addition to the county social service agencies that do SNAP outreach. So understanding some of the complexities of the program, that they're working within communities to help people understand what the requirements are, what paperwork they need to submit, and helping them to be able to submit that timely and accurately.
Great, thank you. If New Jersey can't reduce below 6%, the state could face hundreds of millions of dollars in annual benefit cost obligations. Has the department developed contingency plans for meeting these obligations without eliminating the SNAP program or drastically reducing eligibility? And what programs or services would be defunded to cover SNAP benefit costs if the error rate remains above the threshold?
I mean, I would say we haven't planned for that. We have scenario planned for it yet, but I think since we have a couple years for that budget, as you know, we are a year-on-year budget framework, and so we're continuing to look and seek for how that can impact us. I will say that, in terms of the letter and the advocacy we're engaged on, again, we're in very good company with National Association of Counties, National Governors Association, again, multiple bipartisan groups who agree with us that SNAP error rate payment ding should be delayed. And so we are hopeful for that. I don't count on anything, though, so we are also preparing for the comparison. But in terms of this year's budget, I don't think there's anything to say with regard to that except to continue to talk to you all and talk to our congressional delegation about the potential impacts if those error rate calculations, as currently proposed, do come into fruition. But Natasha, anything more? Yeah.
If you would, if there are any substantive procedures that you put into place, if you could keep us in the loop about that also, because any information you give us is more that we have for the general public.
Let me be clear, I think we talked about this before. We are doing a lot to decrease those payment error rates. That is a constant. That is partly as a result, obviously, more priority given the impending HR1, but we should always seek program integrity, and that includes our payment error rate, regardless of how it's being used or how we disagree with how it might be described or interpreted or applied to us. It is a metric that we follow and seek to improve. That dates back years.
Okay. And last question, what processes has the department established to accurately implement the federal changes without increasing the error rates?
Not sure I follow the question.
Yeah, just do you have developed procedures to accurately implement the federal changes? Now, we know what the federal changes are going to be without causing a jump in the error rates.
I mean, I would say that everything I've talked about today with regard to increasing partnership counties, looking to improve our tech and standing up new eligibility enrollment systems, again, helping people who are eligible enroll and stay enrolled, right? And thinking about how we can think about incentives for both counties as well as some of our vendors to think through all that. Our challenges are going to be greater. So I think everything I've talked about in the last couple hours goes directly at your point. We've been trying to think every way we can, how can we be more creative? How can we introduce new tech to help people get the eligible individuals get the coverage that they are entitled to? So how do we continue to work through that process? I will note, and this is related to your question, maybe this is where you're going, but with so many more interactions, again, for 30% of people, you're going to literally have double the number of interactions with more paperwork and more boxes to check and more areas that we have to determine things. I guarantee you there are going to be more instances of hiccups in that administrative paperwork. A lot of these payment error rates, let me be clear, are a provider or a beneficiary didn't file the appropriate form. That's almost always what we're talking about. So when we sit here about waste, fraud, no. We're talking about the wrong form going in the wrong box to the wrong person. Not all of it, but the vast majority of what we talk about in both Medicaid and SNAP, when we talk about payment errors, are just bad paperwork. I'm not saying that's okay, but I want to acknowledge that this is not people stealing money from the SNAP program or the Medicaid program. That is not what we're talking about here for the most part. There are, of course, instances of waste, fraud, and abuse. But when we talk about, okay, wrong form goes to wrong box, well, now we have a lot more forms to go to a lot more boxes. I guarantee you that we are going to have more problems on the payment error rate because of the very nature of the denominator we're facing. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, sir.